Nice fake Ranger scroll, ma'am. Did you earn that at a flea market or win it in a cereal box? The young ranger's voice sliced through the dining facility's cacophony of clattering trays and soldiers' chatter, sharp enough to draw blood. I didn't flinch, just kept slowly polishing my coffee cup, the ceramic smooth and warm beneath my practiced, weathered hands. Then the 4-star general cut through the crowd, his presence shifting the very atmosphere in the room, making the air itself seem to stand at attention. He rolled up his sleeve with deliberate, almost ceremonial slowness, the fabric whispering its submission. The identical scroll stared back from his arm, vibrant where mine was faded, sharp where mine was blurred by time and trial. And in that suspended moment, 300 soldiers stopped breathing as one, the silence louder than any artillery barrage. My name is Master Sergeant Evie Phoenix Campbell, 62 years old, United States Army, retired. To truly understand the weight I carry, you must first understand what it means to be forged in the fires of the Ranger Creed, not just to wear the tab or bear the scroll, but to have the relentless, unyielding spirit of a ranger seared into your very soul. I served 28 years. Airborne qualified at 18, Ranger qualified in the first class that officially allowed women, fighting for my place every step of the way, and eventually rising to become the first female command sergeant major of the 75th Ranger Regiment. My career was a tapestry woven with threads of parachute silk and the dust of war zones, spanning from the blood-soaked streets of Mogadishu to the frozen mountains of Afghanistan. It was a lifetime measured in night jumps, covert insertions, and the heavy, silent responsibility of sending young soldiers, kids really, into harm's way and praying you brought them all home. Now I volunteer at the DFAC on Fort Benning, a place where new soldiers are minted and old soldiers find solace. I help them with their gear, showing them how to roll a beret so the edge is razor sharp, how to align their unit patches with mathematical precision, and, more importantly, I try to help with their attitudes. Most see a grandmotherly figure with silver-streaked hair pulled into a severe practical bun, her hands, though lined with age and scarred from countless missions, moving with a gentle certainty as she wipes down tables and offers quiet counsel about everything from boot polishing to the bone-deep ache of homesickness. They see Mama Campbell, the kindly volunteer who always has an extra protein bar, a stick of gum, and a listening ear that never seems to judge. They don't see the woman who once held a shattered, shot-up rooftop position in Mogadishu for 72 relentless hours with only a 9mm pistol, 2 nearly empty magazines, and a prayer she wasn't sure anyone was listening to. Her will the only thing standing between her team and annihilation. They see the present, a gentle, aging woman. They are utterly blind to the walking history, the living, breathing testament to what it truly means to be a ranger, standing right beside them, pouring coffee and wiping up crumbs. The setup unfolded on a sweltering, typical Fort Benning afternoon, the Georgia humidity clinging to skin and uniform alike, the air thick with the electric, palpable tension of Ranger School graduation day. The DFAC buzzed with a unique, chaotic energy, the exhausted, shell-shocked euphoria of the newly minted Rangers, the proud, tearful relief of their families, the casual, appraising eyes of the grizzled, seasoned, non-commissioned officers who had seen it all before. The air was a complex cocktail of smells, steam tables laden with food, the sharp tang of industrial disinfectant, and the faint, proud scent of fresh-sewn Ranger tabs. I was moving through the crowded tables with a quiet efficiency, my eyes, still sharp as a hawk's, automatically catching the small, telling details. A misaligned unit patch here, a poorly bloused boot there, a beret shaped more like a chef's hat than a symbol of elite status. I stopped beside a young, baby-faced private, his hands trembling so violently he could barely pin his new, coveted Ranger beret. "Easy there, soldier," I murmured, my voice a low, steadying frequency beneath the din as I took the beret from his shaking hands. "The hard part's over. This right here, this is the victory lap. Now let's make you look like the warrior you've become." As I demonstrated the precise ritualistic roll and placement, my fingers moving with a muscle memory born of decades, the sleeve of my volunteer's polo shirt rode up, revealing the past, a story of sacrifice and survival etched permanently into my skin. Sergeant First Class Miller, a newly minted Ranger School instructor with a chest full of impressive badges, but not yet the hard-won wisdom to match them, noticed it. His eyes, sharp with a confidence that hadn't yet been tempered by real loss, locked onto the faded Ranger scroll. It was inked in 1993, not in a sterile, air-conditioned parlor, but in the sweltering, dust-choked back of a Humvee parked in a bombed-out street in Mogadishu. The artist was a battle buddy named Doc Martinez, a medic who, with tears of frustration and grief streaking through the grime on his face, used a crude mixture of gunpowder and a sterilized sewing needle. The sting of the needle was a fleeting, trivial pain, nothing compared to the gut-wrenching ache for the friends we'd lost that day. The lines, once bold and defiant, were now softened by nearly 30 years of sun, sweat, and the simple, relentless passage of time. The pigment had settled and blurred, like a memory recalled and cherished one too many times. "Whoa, ma'am!" Miller's voice was a little too loud, a performance carefully orchestrated for his group of fellow instructors. "That's some serious ink you got there. You get that at a costume shop? Going for the realistic, battle-hardened look? Sir." A ripple of obligatory nervous chuckles went through his buddies. I didn't look up. I kept my focus entirely on the private's beret, my fingers making minute, precise adjustments to the flash. It's seen more combat jumps, more blacked-out nights, and more moments of pure terror and triumph than your entire platoon has seen training days, son, I said, my voice flat and even, devoid of anger. It was a simple, unvarnished statement of fact, a truth that hung in the air between us. Emboldened by the laughter and the safety of his audience, he stepped closer, deliberately invading my personal space with a smirk that lacked genuine malice but dripped with condescension. "Seriously, though, my girlfriend has a better tattoo on her ankle, a little butterfly. At least hers doesn't look like it's melting in the sun. Sir, that scroll looks like it's been through a paper shredder." The other Rangers at his table stopped their chatter mid-sentence. The silence that fell over our corner of the DFAC was sudden and absolute, feeling heavier and more oppressive than a full rucksack on a 20-mile forced march in the July heat. The private I was helping looked like he wished the floor would open up and swallow him whole, his face a mask of acute embarrassment. I was about to respond, to deliver a quiet, cutting lesson in respect that would be seared into his memory far longer and deeper than any tattoo could ever be, when the entire DFAC snapped to a rigid, unified, razor-sharp attention. The sound of hundreds of chairs scraping back and boots clicking together was a single, deafening, definitive report that echoed off the cavernous ceiling. General Mark Reaper Williamson, the commanding general of all Army Special Operations, a man whose very name was spoken in hushed, reverent tones, moved through the formation. He didn't amble or wander. He moved with a predator's silent, purposeful grace, his eyes the color of a winter sky, missing absolutely nothing. He came straight toward our little island of escalating tension, his gaze fixed intently on me, completely ignoring the frozen, terrified Sergeant Miller. Sergeant Miller stood utterly frozen, his face draining of all color, his eyes wide with the dawning, gut-churning horror of someone who has just realized he has not only kicked a hornet's nest, but has stumbled into the heart of the hive itself. "At ease, Rangers," the general said, his voice a low, calm rumble that nonetheless carried with absolute clarity to the farthest corners of the massive, now silent room. He looked at Miller, then his sharp, all-seeing eyes that had planned invasions and held the weight of countless lives, dropped to my forearm to the faded scroll that was the center of the controversy. Then they swung back to Miller's terrified, pale face. "Problem here, Sergeant?" The question was deceptively simple, a trapdoor over a very deep and dark pit. Miller stammered, his voice cracking with sheer, undiluted panic. "No, sir, just admiring the sergeant major's body art, sir." The general's eyes narrowed just a fraction, a barely perceptible tightening that spoke volumes in the silent room. "Art?" He turned to me, and the entire DFAC watched, utterly captivated, every eye fixed on the scene unfolding before them. "Evie," he said, and the use of my first name here in this very public, formal forum sent another, more powerful shockwave through the ranks. It spoke of a shared, deeply personal past, of a bond forged not in the comfort of headquarters, but in the blood, grit, and terror of combat. Then he did what no one in that room, perhaps in the entire United States Army, had ever seen him do. He reached down and, with slow, deliberate, almost ritualistic movements, unbuttoned the cuff of his own Army combat uniform. He rolled the sleeve up, past his wrist, over a forearm that was still corded with the lean, hard muscle of a soldier half his age. And there, revealed to the entire stunned formation, was the tattoo, the identical Ranger scroll. It was fresh, the lines sharp and black as a moonless night, the colors vibrant and new. It was perfect, but it was undeniably, irrevocably the same design. A mirror image, a brother in arms, separated only by decades of service and sacrifice. A collective, hushed gasp swept through the room like a sudden, cold wind sucking the oxygen from the space. The general pointed a steady, unwavering finger at my faded, blurred tattoo, his gesture imbued with a profound, palpable respect. "This flea market special, as you so disgracefully called it, Sergeant," the general began, his voice gaining a raw, emotional power that gripped every single soul in the DFAC, was inked into Master Sergeant Campbell's skin, using boot polish and a sewing needle held in the shaking, blood-stained hands of a medic who'd just run out of morphine while trying to save the life of your predecessor. The same night, she single-handedly dragged my bleeding, half-conscious body through 2 clicks of Mogadishu's god-forsaken streets, while RPGs tore up the buildings around us and sniper fire chipped the stones at our feet, each round kicking up puffs of dust that looked like ghosts. She carried her weapon, my weapon, a bag of nearly depleted medical supplies, and my dead weight, and she never once hesitated, never once looked back. He took a step closer to the now visibly trembling Sergeant Miller, his presence becoming an overwhelming, almost physical force. This art was earned by the woman who literally wrote the book on Ranger urban combat tactics, the manual you study from, the one you are supposed to teach your Rangers, the woman who trained me when I was a cherry lieutenant, who thought I knew everything about war until she showed me what it really meant. The woman whose faded tattoo has more honor, more raw courage, and more Ranger history etched into its blurred lines than your entire regiment has in their perfect, pristine, untouched ones. He turned to address the entire silent DFAC, his voice booming with the authority of a man who had commanded thousands in battle. Every ranger here stands on the shoulders of giants, giants who didn't need sharp tattoos or social media glory to prove their worth. They proved it with blood, with unimaginable courage, and with 28 years of silent, unwavering, selfless service. You remember that when you put on this uniform. You respect the legacy you represent. You honor the faded scrolls and the stooped shoulders and the hands that tremble not from weakness, but from memories you are too young to possess because they are the very foundation, the bedrock upon which you stand. Miller didn't get an Article 15. The general was a master strategist of human potential, and he believed in redemption, in lessons that transformed character rather than merely punishing infractions. The sergeant was assigned to me. Personally, for 3 long months, he was my shadow, my driver, my apprentice in the profound art of legacy. He drove my old dented pickup truck to veterans' hospitals, where he met rangers who'd lost legs and arms to IEDs, but still stood taller and prouder in their wheelchairs than he did in his perfectly pressed uniform. He pushed gurneys and carried supplies at rehabilitation centers, listening to the ragged, determined breathing of men and women rebuilding their shattered bodies and fractured lives, their spirit unbroken. He stood with me, his head respectfully bowed, his uniform hat held over his heart at solemn memorial services, watching Gold Star families press their wet cheeks against the cold, unfeeling granite of headstones, their trembling fingers tracing the same faded scroll etched beside their loved one's name, a permanent, painful connection. Last week, he showed up at my modest front porch, the evening light casting long shadows across his face. His posture was no longer that of a cocky, swaggering instructor, but of a humbled, reshaped man. "Master Sergeant," he said, his voice thick with a hard-earned, profound understanding, Would you do me the honor, the great honor, of coming with me to get my first tattoo?" We went to Red Dragon Tattoos, the same unassuming, time-worn, and slightly gritty parlor where generations of soldiers, from fresh-faced privates to hardened 4-star generals, have gone to mark their skin with their story, to make a promise in permanent ink. He sat in the worn leather chair, his jaw set with a new kind of determination, not of arrogance, but of commitment. He got the same scroll, in the same place on his forearm, and when the artist finally turned off the buzzing, painful needle and wiped away the last traces of blood and ink, Miller looked down at his own fresh, sharp, vibrant tattoo, then at my faded, storied, beautiful one. And his eyes were clear, the scales of youthful ignorance finally fallen away. "Now I understand, Master Sergeant," he whispered, his voice choked with genuine emotion. "It's not about how it looks. It's about the story it tells, the weight it carries, the promise it represents, the lives it honors." Now he runs the volunteer program with me. The general checks in monthly, not for a formal inspection, but for a cup of strong, black coffee on my porch, and to talk about the old guard and the new generation. And every time, without fail, when a new batch of Rangers gets a little too cocky, a little too focused on the superficial appearance of things, he rolls up his sleeve. He points at the scroll. "This isn't decoration," he tells them, his voice leaving no room for argument, his gaze pinning each young soldier to the spot. "It's a reminder, a stark, permanent reminder that the regiment doesn't care about your tattoo's quality. It cares about your character's quality. It always has, and it always will. The most faded scrolls often have the brightest, most powerful, and most enduring stories to tell. If this story of respect earned through decades of silent, unwavering sacrifice made you stand a little taller If it stirred that deep professional Semper Fi pride in your chest, then you know what to do. Hit that like button. Subscribe, because tomorrow's story features a Navy chief who taught a room full of admirals a lesson about salt-stained deck plate leadership that you can't learn in any war college or academy. Comment. Rangers lead the way below if you understand in your bones that true warriors let their actions roar so they never have to raise their voice. Share this with one young soldier who needs to learn this lesson before the world teaches it to them the hard way. The most fated scrolls often guard the brightest, most enduring, and most important stories.